Here we go. We should be live right now. Three, two, one. Welcome back, people. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another live stream. Today, I have an exciting live stream for you. I have an exciting live stream. I have an exciting update for you. I will analyze Bitcoin, of course. I will analyze the altcoin market. And what I'm going to spend some time talking about in regards to Bitcoin is this is a build up for the next major dump. This is a build up for the next major dump. And I think we could potentially be here for some time. We could potentially be here for, probably a couple weeks. But this is a build up for the next major dump. So, yeah, it should be an interesting live stream. We'll take a look at both the short term, the midterm, and the long term. We'll talk about the altcoin market, Solana, Ethereum, Zcash, Jasmy, and any of the bigger altcoins or smaller altcoins that you guys are pretty much interested in. But welcome back to the channel. I hope you are having an amazing Tuesday. Should be, should be, should be an interesting week. I don't think there's much to expect from this market in the short term. So, if you want some volatility, I don't think you get anything closer to what we got these past couple of days. I don't think you get anything close to when BTC crashed from $97,000 to 60,000. I think we go sideways over the next couple of weeks, and then we get a major dump. So yeah, welcome back to the channel. I hope you guys are having an amazing Tuesday. If this is your first time right here, just do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. If you're watching the stream, do me a favor, hit the like button. Algorithm. I talk about how important smashing the like button, interacting with the content, commenting, anything that you can think of. The algorithm is super powerful. If you guys if you want to see this channel grow, if you think I deserve more followers, if you see value in my content, the way to pay back or the way to give back is to subscribe and to smash the like button. So, anyways, yeah, let's talk about this market, and we're gonna start with Bitcoin, of course. We're gonna start with Bitcoin. So let's get it. Bitcoin right now, $68,000, 642,000. That is where, no, not, excuse me. BTC is trading at $68,000, $637. That is the price as of this recording. But we're not here to talk about price. We are here to talk about where we are, what is more likely in the short term, and also the long term. So let's talk about it. So if you look at the performance of Bitcoin, over the last couple of days, since hitting $60,000, we've now spent about 4 days going sideways. And I think, all right, I think what BTC is actually doing right here is we are establishing a local top. I really believe, this could potentially be the top of, the move from $60,000. And what you more likely to see, is a Bitcoin that is trading between $60,000 and $72,000 before our next major dump. All right. I think this is a build up for the next major dump. A bigger dump is coming, guys. Believe me. $60,000 is more likely, not the bottom of this bear market. All right. Maybe I don't want to say believe me because there's no certainty when you analyzing the market. Especially with Bitcoin. 60,000 could potentially be the bottom, but in my opinion, there is no evidence to back any opinion that $60,000 or any analysis that $60,000 was the bottom of the current bear market. So, my opinion is that whatever we experience over the next couple of days is a build up for the next major dump. I really, really believe this. And I'm going to show you guys why I 100% believe in this being a build up for the next major dump. So, if you look at RSI, we're going to look at some moving averages, some indicators such as the RSI and the MACD. If you look at the RSI, we recently had an extremely oversold RSI, probably in the history of Bitcoin. The RSI was around 13, guys, maybe 15. The RSI was around 15. The only other time we had an RSI this low, you got to go back to, I believe, COVID. And then you got to go back to, previous bear markets. And it's probably no more than just two times. So RSI at 15, we are talking about, history in the making. We are talking about, I don't want to say a once in a lifetime, but definitely a once in the asset, since inception, in the asset's history, basically. So what I think we are going to experience is a reset in, things like RSI, things like the moving averages. Price is going to allow some of the moving averages that we talk about, such as the 21 moving average, the 50 moving average. I think the price is going to allow these EMAs. Well, maybe not allow because, price doesn't allow anything, but I think the slowdown in the movement of the price will allow EMAs to get much more closer, before the next major dump. So I'll give you guys an example of that. If you look at the 50 daily moving average, all right, it is currently around 83,000. Chat, the price of Bitcoin is at 68,000. The 50 daily moving average is around $83,000. So you can already see that there's a reality right here that is just not reality. I don't know if that makes any sense to you guys. Like, this is not the reality. The reality is a bunch of these moving averages are going to be very, very close to the price. And then if you look at the 21 moving average, the 21 moving average, the daily, of course, is somewhere around $77,000. So I do believe, the price of Bitcoin going sideways for a couple of days is going to allow, things such as the 21 EMA and the 50 to get very closer to the price. And also, when you look at the RSI, I believe we are going to have a reset in the RSI. The RSI may come back and retest, the 50 line. You look at the RSI recently, guys, once again, it's only a few times where you have RSI around 15. So I think you might see RSI somewhere around the 50. And once we do get in the 50, 50, 55, higher 40 range, I think that could potentially be the local top. And I think from there on, we started the next major dump to, some of the targets that we've talked about previously. So I'm looking at this RSI and I think we about to see an RSI that trends back up. People are going to get bullish. But I believe, around 50, that should be the end. And we should see a pullback in the RSI. RSI below 50, guys, is a bear market. It's a downtrend. So we have an RSI that is 100% in a bearish territory. And I don't think we get out of the bearish territory on the daily and on the weekly, probably until the next bull market. All right. Maybe the daily RSI might break above might break into the bull market territory. But, if we do get a breakout into the bull market territory, I don't think that, I think that's more likely to be, some sort of a fake out. So if I'm looking at the MACD, I think the MACD could potentially rise. You might even get a buy signal from the MACD. But remember, the MACD is also in a bear market territory. So if you do get a buy signal, it's not really what you may think it is. So I think the MACD may potentially rise, back to, somewhere around the zero line, only to just end up again pulling back and continue to trend, below the zero line. So I'll give you guys kind of an example of this. If you go back to the last bear market, you guys know I have spent, basically the last couple of weeks, comparing our current bear market to the one from 2022. My belief is that we are right here. I think this is exactly what we are more likely to experience. So, if you look at the RSI, guys, when BTC had this major dump from around $48,000 to 25, RSI was extremely oversold. In fact, RSI was around 24, all right? Not as low as, 15, but we were all the way down here. And you can clearly see RSI started trending up, all right? A complete reset. We got to around 51, actually. We actually broke above the 50 line, but this was the end of the move, all right? This was the end of the consolidation. And after that, we had this major dump right here. So I believe, right, this is exactly, well, maybe not exactly, like it won't be identical, but I think you are more likely to see something very similar. If you look at the MACD, guys, look, the MACD was back here. We had a bullish confirmation or a buy signal, all right, as many of you guys would like to call it. The MACD started trending up, all right, very close to the zero line. Once again, if you thought this was bullish, only turned out to be, to be a continuation of the MACD trending, all right, in a bear market territory. So, when I look at BTC right now, to me, I think this is exactly what we are experiencing and we are going to experience over the next couple of weeks. I think price is going to go sideways between 60,000 and 72. Look, I really believe we are putting in, the local top of this move, and this is going to establish, a very clear range. And if we can spend a couple of days here, guys, I mean, think about maybe like 2 weeks in here or maybe 3 weeks. All right. The next major dump, this is the buildup right here. This is the few for the next major dump. Like, I really, really believe, the build-up right here, the few, all right, the few from this consolidation is exactly what is needed, for the price of Bitcoin to dump into the $50,000 range. So if you go back, just give me a second. If we go back, let's just kind of go back to, where I think we are in this bear market. So if we go back and we look at this right here, I want to show you something. All right, look, this was the low right here. The low was around 25,000. All right, a massive week right here. Look, maybe, all right, maybe we don't go down and refill the $60,000 wick, but I want to show you how long we consolidated before the next move to the downside. This consolidation was about, 25, 26 days. 25, 26 days, you are basically talking about 3 weeks, right? So if we do get 3 weeks of a consolidation, and when you go to the weekly, let me show you what this looks like. So when you go to the weekly, this looks like this. Look, this is why I continue to say to you guys, I don't think you are going. Look, people are asking for a weekly rally. I don't think you get a weekly rally, guys. I think you get I think you get something that's very similar to this, where all you get is just a continuation of this, red weekly candles. Maybe and more likely, not as big as like these ones right here. All right, and we can even stay within within the wick of, let me kind of fast forward to right here. So we can even spend the next 2 weeks, guys, between literally 60,000, and this is exactly what I'm talking about, actually, $60,000 and $72,000. So you get weekly candles, but these weekly candles are, within this week right here. All right, I don't think, you are going to see massive weekly candles like this, like probably. All right. Before we get the next major leg down, look, I don't think you are going to see, massive weekly candles like this. I think you are going to see some red weekly candles, but probably just not as big as these ones. Like, this is just crazy. You're talking about going from $86,000 to 76,000. Like, this is a $10,000 move. Actually more than a $10,000. It's a $20,000 move. If you go from $90,000 right here. But anyways, guys, look. So 26 days, you are basically talking about 3 weeks. So we are early February. You're basically talking about early March, guys. Like early March, the daily consolidation is over. And then we get the next major dump, probably all the way down to around $52,000. And probably, all right, probably all the way down into, the lows of the bear market, if we are going to be very honest. Or, a major dump into the low $50,000 range. And then I actually think this is more likely. A dump all the way down into the low $50,000 range. And then you finally get the weekly day cap bounce that everyone is asking for. I think somewhere around here, just think about this, chat. Right here, 2-3 weeks, all right? And then you get, but within, an overall continuation of this, but once you're here, you could potentially get this, all right? Once you're here, you could potentially get something that looks like this. And then the final, capitulation into the lows of the bear market, $39,000, that's what we talked about. So I actually believe this is more likely. All right. I really, really believe this is more likely. Now, I don't want to focus on this because I'm kind of getting away from the topic. What I wanted to, focus on is what you are more likely to see from Bitcoin, like over the next couple of days, just let's say 3 weeks. How is Bitcoin more likely to perform from now in the next 3 weeks? I believe, all right, right now, we are actually, all right, I actually think we are putting in a top. All right, I think this is going to be the top of this 3 weeks, 2 weeks consolidation. So if we are going to spend about 2 weeks, I think the top could be this right here. And then right now, all we got to do is we just got to wait for the lows, all right? So are we, if we go to the weekly, the lows could potentially be, look, you can make this whatever you want, to be very honest. The lows could potentially be, let's just say $62,000 right here. So if you get a Bitcoin that trades like this, for 3 weeks, on the daily, this will look like this. Maybe something like this. Like, I don't know how this will look exactly. Even a little higher, and then bang. Like, to me, something like this is more likely. Remember, this is a daily right here, not a weekly. And then after, this is the move. We can even get a pullback into, what was a support becomes a resistance, and then, the low $50,000 range. All right. So, look, once again, just go back to the last bear market, guys. You kind of get the picture, if you are, if you're looking right here. All right. You kind of get the picture. Now, this is the weekly day cap bounce because this one goes on for a little longer. And if you actually go to the weekly time frame, you can see the weekly day cap bounce where price grows from $17,000 to 25. You see price going up right here. I don't think on the weekly you are going to see price going up right now. I think it's more likely, once we down here to go up, and then we get the last capitulation, and then we, build the base for the next bull market. Once again, yeah, look, I don't want to get away from, what the topic is, but that is, what I'm kind of thinking about. And going back to the RSI, a reset in the RSI is exactly what I think you are going to see. A reset in the MACD, I think that's exactly what you are going to see. If I'm looking at this MACD, I don't think you get a continuation of this right here, without first, you can even look at, if you look at the MACD momentum on the daily, guys, we are seeing, these are lower highs, higher lows. We are seeing higher lows, meaning, the momentum is kind of fading. So I do think you are going to see some strong momentum. You're going to see some green bars or histogram right here. You're going to see something like this. But this is not going to mean, that you should be a buyer. The bulls are probably going to be happy, and they're probably going to think this is the beginning of, an incredible Bitcoin recovery, an incredible bull market, only to end up, all right? Only to end up with something very similar to, like this. You see this right here, chat? Or probably, if I go back to, only to end up with something like, hold on, where was the, so if we're talking about this right here, right? Right here, only to end up with something like this. So basically, you're looking at this right here, boom, and then you start building up, and then, that is what I kind of envision. So, yeah, look, let me know, man. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Let me know your thoughts in the chat. What do you think? What do you think is more likely to, to happen over these next couple of weeks before we get a major weekly bounce? Once again, if this is your first time right here, guys, hit that subscribe button, hit the like, and let's keep going, right? Let's keep it going. We are looking at position in Wolf soon. Oh man, Wolf has been, I'm gonna be honest, I have been very impressed with the strength of Wolf because, when you think about the weakness in BTC, Wolf is a Bitcoin miner. When you think about the strength in Wolf and when you think about the weakness in BTC, you probably think, stocks like Wolf, Iron. I mean, Iron I think has already topped. But you probably think, Wolf will be struggling right now. But hey, man, it's not looking too bad. But let me talk about Wolf. Look, I was. Let me get rid of this. So on the weekly, I think this is a massive weekly candle right here. And let me explain this, right? If I'm looking at Wolf, excuse me, guys. If I'm looking at Wolf, I don't want to say you need this weekly candle to close above $17. If we don't close above $17, it is safe to say the top is potentially in. It makes sense to get out of your position because from here on, we could potentially go lower. Closing above the $17 resistance is a major breakout. And anything below that is a major concern. All right? Now, this to me looks really good. There's nothing here to not be bullish about. Like, this looks really good. But I think you need this breakout. If you don't get this breakout right here, if by Friday, right, by the time the stock market closes, if this weekly candle is not above $17, I think you could be in some trouble. And honestly, if I have a position, I'll probably get out of that position. The other thing that I want to look at right now, guys, is the weekly RSI. All right, if I'm looking at this weekly RSI right here, and we get this close below $17, I think I'm looking at this as a bearish divergence. To me, that's exactly what my interpretation would be. Now, the trend is up. So I want to make sure I point that out. The trend is up on the weekly. On the monthly, we are still putting in higher highs and higher lows. My only concern is that, look, we got to 17. We had a pullback. We came back, tried to break above 17. That was a failure. Had another pullback. We're going up to 17 again. So if we can't break above $17, and again, I'm talking about a weekly close above 17, to me, that's a major, major red flag. And I think this could potentially be the top. You can look at this and say this is a triple top, after Friday, of course. And I think that could be that this is the beginning of, a pullback that comes back to retest around $11, $10. And once you lose, man, like once you lose these lows, I mean, you're looking at a pullback that could, you're looking at going back to around $4. You're looking at potentially going all the way back to around $2. So to me, that's exactly what I would be looking at, if I was interested in Wolf right now. If I'm looking at the MACD momentum indicator, right now, this is not, look, there's a weakness right now. All right, there's definitely a weakness. The only thing I like is that the monthly looks really good. If I'm looking at monthly MACD indicator, monthly MACD momentum indicator, the bulls are definitely in control of this market. There's strength with the bulls. So remember, the monthly is more important than the weekly. So if my monthly is bullish and my weekly is bearish, I look at my weekly as an amazing buy opportunity. But at the same time, you can't ignore the fact that if we fail to break above $17, if we fail to close above $17, I don't think you can ignore that this would be a red flag. So I'm looking at Wolf. Honestly, I wouldn't do anything at the current price. Also, just forget about that for a minute, guys. Like, I think like this was a red flag today, if we are going to be honest, because price broke above $17, but look at the daily close, guys. We ended up closing the day at $16.63. So to me, that was a major, major, major red flag. So if you do see a pullback, from here on, just don't be surprised, guys. If price breaks above 17, don't care much until you see that daily closes above 17. And the weekly too is going to be extremely important. So I do think, this week is very, very important for Wolf. If we go down to like the 1 hour, if you guys are interested for, how can I tell early on if we have a breakdown? Well, on the daily, you want to keep an eye on these daily closes. I'm going to say this is not good at all. And I actually will probably get out of my position. I could be wrong, but I think this is not good. The only thing I will wait for right now is, the weekly close. All right, we got a couple more days. Today is Tuesday. We got 3 trading days left, so we'll see how that plays out. But I don't like this. But you can go down to the 1 hour. So if you see something that looks like this, let me show you the 1 hour. So got rejected, ended up with this pullback. You want to see another up. All right, if you get a lower high, and then you get a pullback, and then you take out the lows, that means that you're looking at a beginning of a downtrend, because this will be a change in the trend. And if you see something like this on the daily, on the 1 hour, it is safer to say get out of your position, because most likely you have a pullback back to around $11. And once again, once you lose 11, I'm looking at 11 right here. Once you lose 11, you're looking at 10. Once you lose 10, guys, you are looking at all the way down to around, $4, $5. you're looking at all the way down to around $2. So Wolf, man, I'm gonna say you gotta have to keep an eye on it. All right, now if we can break above $17 with a weekly close above 17, I think that is a major buy opportunity because you're now looking at a Wolf that could potentially push all the way up to around $30. And once you break above 30, you're looking at $43. So I do think, a very, very interesting week for the stock. Hopefully that is helpful. I just spent too much time, looking at Wolf, but it is what it is. Once again, appreciate you guys who have tuned in. If this is your first time right here, guys, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button. We are looking at Bitcoin, and the topic of today's conversation is what you see right here. $72,000. Hold on, let me show you guys. For those of you guys who are just all season, no chance. Yeah, guys, forget about altcoin season. I mean, chat. I am telling you right now, man. You got this market, you got to start thinking different, and you have to be extremely selective. Like, forget about altcoin season. Get away from that. All right. Instead of waiting for an altcoin season, you should be researching whatever altcoins that you are interested in, and you should try to be selective. If it's 20 different altcoins, try to see which ones that you actually like. With that, you like them based on the fundamentals or based on the technicals. I think that's exactly what you should do. And, pick the 3 altcoins and, try to maximize whatever that you can get from them. I think waiting for an altcoin season is, that's a losing strategy if you ask me right now. We in 2026, guys, if we didn't get an altcoin season in 2024 and in 2025, yeah, you have to forget it. I spent a lot of time, looking at, like, if I'm looking at this is total others. So others is excluding to anything in the top 10. So that is Bitcoin, Ethereum, your Solanas, whatever that's in the top 10. This is what the chart looks like. I don't know about you guys, but this does not look like something that is about to give us an altcoin season. And I know people are looking at the Bitcoin dominance. Yo, guys, look, man, it is a completely different market. Like, this was one of my mistakes in this last bull market, guys. I was treating the bull market like it was 2021, 2017. Yeah, this is a completely different ball game. So, look, I wouldn't rely too much on the Bitcoin dominance. I would just look at every single altcoin individually. When you say altcoin season without Solana, I don't think so. Altcoin season without Sui, I don't think so. And the reason I'm saying I don't think so is because, look at the chart of Solana. I think, you're looking at a drop all the way down into the 30s, all the way down into the 20s. And we better get lucky and we don't drop into 10s. All right. If I'm looking at Sui, I'm looking at a crash. Sui right here, guys. I'm looking at a crash all the way down to around 43 cents. 43 cents. That is another 50% crash going from, 93 cents right now. So if people are talking about altcoin season, yeah, I don't think you get an altcoin season without the likes of Sui, without the likes of Solana, because yeah, their charts, they just look bad. Zcash. Look, I'm predicting going all the way back below $100. I don't think you might get an altcoin season without Zcash, probably. But I'm looking at Dogecoin. Look, if I'm looking at this, this looks bad to me. All right, if I'm looking at XRP, can you imagine an altcoin season, excluding the last bull market? Like, that was, something else was holding XRP. But XRP goes back into around 60, 70, 80 cents. Yeah, altcoin season, we got to forget it. I think we have to, look at individual tokens and, be very selective. The ones that look good, that is where you should put your capital. and the ones that don't look good, then you just move on. But anyways, yeah, look, hit the like, subscribe. The conversation of today is BTC probably $72,000 was the top of the move. Probably we consolidate for 2 3 weeks, and then we dump back into the low $50,000 range. So my opinion is that we are literally, all right, we are building up the momentum to send us down into the low 50s. But let's see, all right. Let's see around March, April, May. Let's see where price of Bitcoin is, and we'll reevaluate. I gotta be honest with you guys. Look, right now there's really not much to talk about in terms of Bitcoin and the altcoin markets, because today's price, all right, the analysis took place weeks ago. Right? What we have right now is the result of the analysis that we did weeks ago. So going down into the low $50,000 range, the breakdown is just not right now. We need to build another base, the same way we built the base right here from 80,000 to 97, which allowed us to crash down to $60,000. We need to build another base in the short term that will allow us to drop to the low $50,000 range. So if I'm looking at BTC right here, guys, there's really not much to analyze, and this is why when you look at the price, over the last 4 or 5 days, like have we really done anything that is worth talking about? I don't think so. We haven't done anything. Today's price is because the homework, the research was done back here. If you were not predicting the BTC would dump into these levels, when we were somewhere up here, then, it's too late for you to be talking about, any of this. Right now, the conversation should be, how do we get to the low $50,000 range? And to analyze that, we need more data. Right now, we just don't have the data because, look what we have right here, guys. This is not even a setup right here. So, give it a couple more days. Let's see what plays out. But if I'm going to bet on something, I'm betting on we get 3 weeks of something that looks like this. All right. We build a small base on the daily. Something that looks like this. And then we crash down into the low $50,000 range. So the analysis for this, is going to take place once we have the data. Like right now, I'm just speculating. And not only am I speculating, I'm just, trying to build a case on what we could potentially do, right, in the short term that will allow us to go down into the low $50,000 range. But without this data, I shouldn't even be saying anything, to be very honest with you guys. Like, I should wait and wait and wait. And then once we have data, then that will be the perfect time to look at the chart of Bitcoin and actually start the conversation of, hey, if we lose these levels, you're looking at a crash all the way down into the low $50,000 range. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to smash the like button. And let's keep going. Let's keep going. Let me talk about your altcoins. So altcoins. I want to spend a couple minutes looking at altcoins. Let me start with Solana. If I'm looking at Solana right now, on the daily, I think over the next 2-3 weeks, we go sideways. This was a major drop from 148 straight down to $66. So on the daily, we were extremely oversold. So I believe RSIs are more likely to reset. Probably come anywhere around the 50 line. I think the MACD probably resets. You might get a MACD that, gives us something that looks like this where we trend up, but, price doesn't really do much. You see the price right here, guys. We, really didn't do much. You might get something very similar to that. Right here, we go sideways. And then, after that, my belief is that we'll drop all the way down into probably the low 50, $40 range. But you got to have to give it some time. If I'm looking at weekly, I mean, you guys, I want you to take a look at this weekly chart right here. This does not look like something that is bullish. This looks really, really bad. We had a weekly close below $95. And if you remember, I told you, you don't want the price of Solana below 95 on a weekly close, because once you get that, Chad, this is basically the confirmation that we're going lower. All right. Regardless of what we do right here, this is your confirmation right here. So if I'm looking at Solana, guys, I mean, honestly, let's be very honest right here. Once this daily consolidation is over, all right, again, just give it a few weeks. We're going back to $50, $49, all right, basically. So this is why, I remain extremely bearish on altcoins. And when people, on X are talking about an altcoin season, I just laugh, and I try to be a person who's looking at this market from, a very objective point of view, and, look at the market not only from the lens of, we are going back to new all-time highs, that this is only a bullish market that only goes up. Like, I wish when I first joined this market, I came across very honest people that were looking at this market in a way that was neutral, both bearish and bullish. And this is exactly what I try to do. I'll give you guys an example, since we are talking about altcoins. Back in February of 2025, look, Injective and Fetch AI. I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with the two projects. Like, these two right here was some of the best performers in 2023. I'm talking about going up around 5, 6, 7, 10,000%. Literally, guys, in a matter of 12 months. And in February of 2025, all right, I looked at Injective and I looked at Fetch AI, and I came to a conclusion that we were in a long-term bear market. And I was looking at Fetch AI dropping all the way down to 17 cents. Remember, at the time, Fetch was trading at 75 cents. I was predicting 17 cents, which is, at the time, just ridiculous. Injective was around $13. I was predicting somewhere between $2 and $4. So when you look at the performance of the two projects, when you look at the performance of the two projects, Fetch AI, I was predicting 17. It is currently at 15 cents. Right? It is currently at 15 cents. Injective, I was predicting, $2 to $4. It is currently $3. All right. These are predictions from February of 2025. It is posted right here, guys. And I'm telling you at the time, it was not popular. And the reason I posted this was because I just kept on coming across influencers. Now, I don't know if they were getting paid to shield the two projects, but I was just coming across the influencers who was looking at Injective at $13. And they were talking about what an amazing opportunity this was. And I was looking at it, and I was just like, actually, these are some of the worst looking charts. And if I'm right based on my technical analysis, I am looking at a 70 to an 80% crash. So if you look at Injective, if you go from $13, 13 is up here, guys, you go all the way down to 3. Yo, Chad, this is a 78% crash. Can you imagine if you follow the wrong influencer and you bought at $13 and your position is currently down, almost 80%? Like, how do you look that same person and you know what I mean, guys? Like, how do you go back to that person? How do you continue to consume their content knowing that, they knew this? Maybe they didn't know, all right? But, you follow someone with thousands and thousands of followers who's telling you at $13 that this is a good looking chart and it's going back to $50 potentially. At the time, the predictions was a $500 injective. Chat, if you don't believe me, spend some time on X. See what the predictions were, back in these days. So anyways, the reason I'm pointing these two projects out is because the setup is exactly the same setup Solana's got today. It's exactly the same setup with a bunch of these altcoins. When I was looking at Injective and Fetch AI in early 2025, one of my reasons why I was bearish on these two projects, they were trading below their 10 monthly moving average. And I can tell you right now, guys, stay away from anything that is below the 10 monthly moving average because you are looking at something that is in a long-term downtrend. So if I'm looking at Solana right now, guys, going back to Solana, and we can look at any of your favorite altcoin. If I'm looking at Solana and I put up my 10 monthly moving average, look, it's exactly the same setup. And this is why, all right, I haven't been bearish on Solana from below $100. No, I was bearish when the price of Solana was around 160. Because the moment we lost the 10 monthly, I knew Solana was cooked. So what I'm saying to you guys right now is give it some time, because when you're looking at a monthly time frame, it takes time, guys. This was done in early 2025. We in February, guys, this is a year later. We in 2026. So if I'm looking at Solana right now and my prediction is, hey, we probably are going to $30. I'm not saying we're going to $30 in the next 2 months. What I'm saying is probably late 2026, early 2027, you're looking at a $20 Solana, probably. All right, because if we do get a weekly bounce, all right, the weekly bounce could potentially last for about, maybe a month, maybe 2 months. So if we get a weekly bounce, let's say we go to $50 and then we get a weekly bounce, and that weekly bounce lasts for about 2 months. Forget the weekly bounce in March. 2 months pushes you into around May, May, June, of course. And then, you spend the next 4 or 5 months going down. Chat, you're looking at end of 2026. And then you're going to have to build a base for the next bull market. That's another couple of months. That is why you have to be extremely patient. And this is why, you see me talk about, guys, you don't need to be in a rush. All right? When the bottom is in, when the true bottom is in, you are going to see it. Because we are going to go sideways for some time. Like, we are going to spend months going sideways. Now, when I say sideways, I'm not talking about a market that goes like this, right? I'm talking about a market that is trending like this. Like, you are going to be within a range that is going to be very recognizable. You're going to be able to see, oh, hey, you know what? That looks like a market that has bottomed, and it looks like we are building a base for the next bull market. This is the base right here, guys. If you think about Solana in the last bear market, like, this is like almost a whole year just going sideways if you actually think about it. This is the low, November 2022. You don't get a breakout, guys, until October 2023. This is 322 days later. For 322 days, you tell me that you can't identify that the market is bottoming and the structure is changing. If you can't identify that, then you're going to have to do something else. It's not just Solana, though. It's a bunch of these altcoins. You go down and you look at something like, XRP. All right, we talked about XRP. If I'm looking at XRP on the monthly, my 10 monthly moving average, I don't want anything to do with XRP. Price well above its 10 moving average, trading below the 10 moving average. So, expectation is we are going to continue to crash until until proven otherwise. Let's take a look at Zcash. All right, this is Zcash right here. And what's even worse about Zcash, it is losing its 10 monthly moving average. And this is why I actually think Zcash is going all the way down, below $100. You can short Zcash right here, and I think you are going to be fine. I don't see Zcash breaking back above, its February month. Like, I don't think we go back to the highs of February, 321. We may push all the way back closer to $300. I don't even think we're capable of doing that. But if I'm looking at Zcash on the monthly, this thing is cooked. And I think look, it's a long, long way down to the bottom. Like, this could take a couple more months. Remember, we're gonna rally, we're gonna go down. This is gonna take some time. So, not one of these altcoins that I look at right now and think that we have some sort of an altcoin season. Look, XLM right here, guys. All right, XLM around 25 cents. That was the time to get out of your position if you had any. And my prediction is, it's a 56% crash. When we were around 20 cents, I gave you guys the prediction back in this range right here. And you can clearly see we're not far from it. So, hopefully you guys are patient. Hopefully you're not in a rush. If you want to do anything in this market, make sure it is short term. In my opinion, most of you guys, you shouldn't even touch crypto right now. Wait and wait and wait. All right? Don't trade it, guys. Trading is you're just going to lose money right now. If you want to trade crypto, make sure you're shorting it. And don't use leverage because, CZ, Binance, these guys are they're just doing all kinds of stuff right now. So, I'll be careful. I will 100% be careful if I wanted anything to do with the cryptocurrency market. In the stock market, guys, you can do well. Look, you want to short crypto, just go ahead and short MSTR. All right, buy some puts, guys. You're going to do very well. Just go ahead and short Coinbase. Buy some puts. You're going to do very well. If I'm looking at Coinbase, I think Coinbase is coming back to $70. If you buy, maybe you don't buy puts here. Wait for a weekly bounce, probably back to around $200, and they buy some puts. If I'm looking at MSTR, maybe you don't jump into puts right here. Wait for a rally, probably back to around, $180, $190, and then get into some puts. I think, Sailor Coin, if I'm looking at it, guys, you're looking at it completely like $70, $80. Probably 50, guys, if we are going to be honest. So you don't have to short altcoins. You can short a bunch of these stuff. If you don't want to short Coinbase and MSTR because you think it's too late, that's okay. All right, I want you to take a look at IREN. IREN, Chad, let me tell you something. If we close below $33, if the month of February closes below 33, maybe we don't. But even if we close below the 10 monthly moving average, guys, which is around $37, I think you can jump into some shorts. I have some puts already. I grabbed some puts. I think I'm down probably 10, 20% right now, which is, perfectly fine. But I'm looking at a pullback or a crash. I don't know why I'm calling it a pullback. I'm looking at a crash. Oh, the bare minimum, we're looking at $15. Let's take a look at Wolf. Wolf, I wouldn't touch it right here. I think this one is it's a little bit more dangerous. But if it can close this week below $17, I would give it a shot, man. Maybe not too much, but I would give it a shot. And I would think this could potentially be the top end. If this thing comes back to around, $42, oh my gosh, can you believe this? Yeah, because I don't think, BTC continues this bear market and, you have things like this, the miners just, somewhere on their own islands and, continuing to go up. I don't see that. And then you got Raya, I think you got stuff to take advantage of, instead of playing around with these altcoins and having to pay fees and having to do this and getting liquidated. Yeah, it's too much to deal with. I think crypto becomes very attractive once the bear market is over. I really need to look at ZBCN. It looks really bad, man. I've analyzed this thing for a very, very long time. Look, ZBCN, Chad, you see what I'm talking about? Price goes below the 10 monthly moving average. Yeah, I don't even want to look at it. In terms of buying it, well, I don't even want to look at it. So if I'm looking at ZBCN, it's a long way down. Like it really is. And I know some of you guys look like you may not like it because this may be the project that you like, or you might have money in the project, but just me thinking about it logically as someone who would appreciate people being honest, even if I'm wrong, based on my analysis and just based on my interpretation of these charts, like this is not a good looking chart. And I believe, bare minimum, you're looking at a 40% crash, basically just getting rid of this entire monthly candle. But I don't see why we don't come all the way down to around, 0.0007, which is a 65% crash. So depending on your entry, like you could be in some trouble. So, yeah, this is not looking good. You go to the weekly, look, it's a continuation of these lower highs right here. If you want to be bullish long term, price got to break above 0.0035, and you got to put in a weekly lower high. And I don't see that happening anytime soon. If I go to the daily, even the daily is just, in a continuation of this downtrend right here. A couple weeks ago, I kind of got a little bit excited because price broke here. But, when you zoom out, when you go to the weekly and you go to the monthly, you realize, it doesn't matter what's taking place on the daily. Like, this is a bad looking chart because the long term is what matters. The short term doesn't really mean anything. The long term is where value comes from. If you want to know where the market is going, guys, always start with the monthly. If the monthly is down, whatever happens in the short term, it does not mean anything. I don't want to say it's meaningless. It does mean something in the short term, but yeah, you want to be careful. You do want to be careful. So yeah, look, hit the like, hit the subscribe. Let's let's wrap up this. Let me go back to BTC. Unless you guys have anything else that you are very passionate about that you want me to analyze. But, I can go back to BTC and, look up BTC for the final time and with some altcoins, and then we'll call it a night. What do we have? What do I think? I think XRP is going down definitely below 70 cents. I think you're looking at 50, 60, 70 cents, somewhere around there. Yeah, somewhere around there. Like, those would be my targets. Those would be my targets. All right. So once again, people, Bitcoin looks very bearish on this monthly right here. Look, closing February below $74,000 it's not going to be good. This is going to further confirm that this downtrend will continue, and there's really nothing that we can do about it if we are going to be honest. Price well below its 10 monthly moving average. We lost the 10 monthly around $90,000. If you were still bullish after 90,000, I mean, you are very brave if you ask me. But anyways, so my belief is that probably, all right, this is not a certainty, but probably this is the top of this this rally, and probably we spend the next 2 3 weeks going sideways. We get something that looks like this before we go down into the low $50,000 range. So my belief is that we are right now building a momentum for the next major dump. The worst thing that's happening to Bitcoin, guys, is this consolidation right here. All right. Look, the bulls are going to view this as something that's actually positive. All right. The bulls are going to view this as a positive. BTC going sideways. And I promise you, you are going to see upside price targets. But I'm going to tell you right now, guys, the worst thing that's about to happen to Bitcoin is this consolidation right here. Because the only way we dump is because of this consolidation. This is a refuel. Right? Bitcoin is refueling. Like, we are building up the momentum for the next major dump. This was exactly the same conversation I was having with you guys, when Bitcoin was rallying from $80,000 to $97,000. I don't know how many of you guys remember this. I told you that the worst thing that's happening to Bitcoin is this rally right here. Because this is a preparation for this dump right here, guys. And that's exactly what we got. I bet you, if you go back and you watch my streams, if you watch my updates, when I was talking about BTC going from $80,000 to $96,000, if you come and watch these updates right here, what is it? If you come back and you watch these updates right here, guys, this is exactly what I was talking about. These exactly same words. I told you guys the worst thing that's happening to Bitcoin is this move from $80,000 to $96,000, because this is a refuel. All right, for us to go from these levels down to my downside targets is because first we are going to get a rally. So I'm telling you right now, this is not a good thing. All right, many are going to believe this is a bottom process and then we go higher. But look, they could be right, but I just don't believe it. They could be right, but I just don't believe it, guys. Like, I really, really don't believe it. And I don't believe it not because I don't want to believe it, because the chart is bullish. No, it's because the chart is freaking bearish. Right? There's nothing when you look at Bitcoin on the monthly, on the weekly. Bottoms, they don't look like this. All right, there is not a single bottom that looks like this, guys. Not one of them. If you show me a bottom that looks like this, then I will go back and see, okay, what am I missing? What exactly am I missing in my analysis? And so far, I haven't missed anything. And I've showed you guys different indicators that are screaming, this is a bearish market. If you look at the, Ichimoku cloud, right? You look at the performance of it. You don't want to think Bitcoin is bullish when we here and the cloud is up here. All right? You want to be bullish when you have a setup that looks like this, where we break through the cloud and then we trend, above the cloud. And when we do get a pullback, sometimes we bounce off the cloud. This is where you should be bullish. Not like this, guys. This is a repeat of this right here. It is also a repeat of this right here. It is also a repeat of, look how accurate this indicator actually is. It is also a repeat of this right here, guys. All right. We are going to flip bullish once we break through the cloud and we trend above it. All right. That is the Ichimoku cloud right there. If you look at the Bollinger Bands, all right, another fantastic indicator. All right. Remember, indicators are not perfect, but, they get the job done. Look at the price of Bitcoin. We are currently trading in a bear market territory. Where is the bear market territory, guys? When price is below this blue line or between this blue and this green right here. All right, you don't want to be a buyer. You don't want to be bullish. You go back to the last bear market. Look, very identical. All right, a last indicator. You got the super trend. Super trend gave us a sell signal. The moment we lost $96,000, I actually posted on X when the price of Bitcoin, I believe, was at 100,000. I told you guys, once we lose $96,000, get out of your position, because this is a prediction that we have a bear market. The super trend, if this was your buy sell signal or indicator, would have gave you a buy entry at $22,000. All right, at $22,000 you would have bought Bitcoin, and at $96,000 you would have sold Bitcoin. So very reliable, guys. All right, very, very reliable. And another indicators, all right, RSI. You don't want to do anything with Bitcoin when the RSI is all the way down in these areas right here. I know some of you guys, you may be looking at oversold, and you may be thinking, hey, this is a fantastic opportunity. Trust me, chat. In a bear market, RSI doesn't mean anything. If you want to use RSI as your indicator, look for bullish divergences. All right, you want to see if price is going down, but RSI is trending up. RSI should give you higher highs and higher lows, while the price is giving you lower lows and lower highs. All right, RSI, oversold RSI like this is not bullish. There's nothing that's bullish about this, because we're gonna dump while the RSI is what is oversold. Price of Bitcoin will continue to dump. So there is nothing. All right, there's not a reason to be bullish, and this is why, people like myself, there's only a few of us, continue to push forward and continue to fight against this idea that this is a buy opportunity. What I'm saying to you, and what a few of us are telling you, is you're going to have plenty of time to buy any of your favorite altcoin. It probably won't be the bottom, because we don't know where the bottom is. But best believe it's going to be at a place where you don't have to endure an 80% drawdown. Chat, I don't know how many of you guys, but let me show you something here. If you lose, we're going to start from 45%. If you lose 45% of your capital, you need that investment to go up about 81%, not to make profits, but to break even. Once you lose 50%, you need 100% to break even. Remember, same asset is going to have to go up 100%. When we are talking about a cryptocurrency bear market, this is where staying on the sideline is literally, guys, like it is literally the golden ticket to the next bull market. Literally, guys. Because bear markets are going to give you 80% plus, drawdowns. If you lose 80% of your capital, you are going to need 400% not to make profits. You are going to need 400% rallies to break even. If you lose 85%, you are going to need 566%. If you lose 90%, which many of these altcoins are going to lose you 90% of your capital, you need a 900% to break even. And oh my God, make a mistake and lose 95% of your capital. Chat, you are going to need a 1900% not to make profits, to break even. This is why, all right, this is why I am someone who looks at, let me show you something right here, chat. When I see something like this, all right, where influencers, look, this guy's got 1.3 million followers. He's talking about Sui is go time, $3.76. And then you look at the price of Sui. Then you look at the price of Sui. Sui is currently trading at 92 cents. 370 something. So Look, this is a 75% crash, guys. If you go back to this right here, yo, you down 75%. You need a 300% move to break even. This is why, I read the say, guys, look, man, maybe you should be patient. It's okay to miss some gains. It's okay to miss, it is okay to miss moves. But what's not okay is, losing 75, 90, 80, 95% of your capital. I know I'm kind of all over the place, but, you get the picture. Guys, look, people like myself who are just say, guys, just be cautious. Trust me. We're not bad people. I'm telling you right now, guys, we are not bad people. And we want you to do great. All right? We want you to do great. We want you to be successful. And we want you to take advantage of every opportunity that is in this market. But what we are trying to have you avoid is, you lose 80% of your capital. Now you need, almost a 10x, not to make profits, just to break even. All right, not to make profits, guys, only to break even. So, just kind of going back to Bitcoin, we look at Bitcoin and we say, guys, based on historical performance in a bear market, which is exactly what we are in right now. All right, and I know some people still don't want to accept the fact that this is a bear market. Guys, you got to accept the reality, right? In a bear market, BTC tends to retrace back to its 98 fib target. And when you go from the swing high to the swing low, guys, the 98 fib target is a $39,000 Bitcoin. Now, do we have to go all the way down to $39,000? Absolutely not. But what we are saying to you is, all right, this is a potential price target. And Bitcoin is known. All right, Bitcoin is known to coming back to this 78 point. Bitcoin is known to coming back to this 78 fib target, guys. It's 0.60. All right, 78.60 fib target. It doesn't have to, but what if it does go down to $39,000? If you're buying altcoins right now and BTC goes down to 39, like, do you know what kind of pain? Do you know what kind of crash altcoins are going to, to experience over the next, I don't even know how many months. I don't know if it's going to take years. Yo, when we talk about altcoins, chat, it's 2 years in a bear market already. Because early 2024, for most altcoins, that was the top. You go from early 2024, early 2025, that's a year. From early 2025, early 2026, that's 2 years. And if we're looking at 2027, that's 3 years, guys. Forget about making profits. Yo, you have tied down your capital for the next 3 years. All right, when you could take advantage of, put that in the stock market. Put that in the S&P 500. Put that into some bonds, CD, something. You don't like 5% returns? You don't like 10% returns, guys? Okay. I'm going to give you an 80% haircut. That's the cryptocurrency market. Anyways, appreciate you guys. Look, hopefully this was helpful. And could I teach you how to do a stop loss order? Well, it should be easy, depending on what you're using. It all depends on the platform, right? They should be able to have some resources on the platform on how to use a bunch of, stop losses, profit takers, like predetermined stop losses, predetermined profit takers, or just go to YouTube, man. If it's Binance, how to use on Binance. It's going to be a lot of tutorials around. Here we go. There's one right here. Stop limits, stop losses. There you go, right here. Yeah, there's a lot of tutorials out there. All right, chat. Appreciate you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the stream. I will see you next time.